Has there been a regulation impact statement prepared for the government's vaping reforms?
The impact statement is in the process of being prepared.
So, but a decision's been made, hasn't it?
It's not. No, a high-level decision was announced, and because the details are still being worked through, the Office of Impact Analysis did not consider that to be a final decision at this stage.
But there was no regulation impact statement done before the high-level decision was made?
It was necessary to do some stages of the impact assessment, so the requisite parts of the impact statement have been, impact analysis have been completed.
Public?
It won't be made public until a final announcement is made.
But there is a document currently, or before there was a document before the high-level decision was made?
Yes.
Could that be provided to the committee on notice, please? You could take it. I'm not asking for it today.
That's fine. I'll take it on notice, yes.
In terms of the legality of where it sits. But yeah.
The decision's been made, so it seems like it should be something made available to the committee. In that analysis you've done before the high-level decision, I presume you would have looked at the effectiveness of the decision in mid-2020 to move towards a prescription model. How many young Australians were vaping before the introduction of the prescription model? What proportion of? And I don't mind what age you cut that off at, whatever you've got there for young, definition of young.
So I think we've got data from 2019 and 2020. So
yep, that's pretty close.
Yeah, I'll just go to my colleague.
So in 2019 it was 5.3% of people 18 to 24.
Okay, that's the best you got from young. And what is it today?
18 to 24 is 25%.
Is that grown from 5 to 25%?
That's what it says here, if I'm reading that correctly.
So the prescription model that was introduced in mid-2020 on any metric has to be noted as a massive failure, doesn't it? I mean, proportion of use among young Australians grew by 5 times.
There's probably a variety of reasons why there's been a proliferation of use, and it would be difficult to trace all of those reasons. I don't think anybody's done a study of that. But
I was told, I was heavily involved and I'm sure Professor Murphy remembers, and with others I was very critical of the decision in mid-2020, but I was assured that no, this is the right model and it will help crack down on the proliferation of vaping. Obviously that was wrong. Why should we have any faith that the same people who were totally wrong about the 2020 reforms are going to be right about the 2023 reforms?
I don't think anybody could have predicted the widespread non-compliance with the legal requirements. I just don't think people could.
Well, I did, and plenty of others did. I'd said at the time it would lead to a growth in the black market, and that's exactly what it's done. And now we're being told, no, it'll be all fine again through what is still a prescription model or a pharmacy retail model. It seems very strange that we double down on failure like that, on massive failure too. Last estimates I asked if anybody had spoken to New Zealand health officials and their experience, and I believe the response was no, they hadn't. I was a little gobsmacked by that. Has anybody spoken to New Zealand officials?
We're in the process of talking to some New Zealand officials about the regulatory design and what they're doing.
What does that mean in the process of? Have you sent an email? Or what's in the process? So you have made no contact yet? You're planning to make contact?
I have to take that on notice, but I've been informed.
Has anyone in your team personally spoken, either by Zoom or phone, or physically spoken to anyone in New Zealand?
I'd have to take that on notice.
This seems maybe there'll be taught in future lessons in how not to create policy, because I would have thought before making a major decision on the regulation of a product in Australia, that good policy practices would mean looking around at other similar models, potentially around the world. We've got a clear example of another country, very similar culture, very similar legal system, and the department has not made a single effort to contact anyone in that country to inform the Minister or Cabinet or others about the effects of that policy? It seems, how can you justify not doing that basic work before a government makes a serious decision here?
Senator, I can't speak for the TGA in terms of the regulatory consultation. We speak to international counterparts on a regular basis, particularly in the margins and the context of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. There's a number of countries that have taken very different steps. The prescription model was a unique, approach in Australia at the time for nicotine vapes in particular, but we speak regularly to a whole range of international partners.
But not New Zealand.
So I need to check with New Zealand and who in the team has spoken to New Zealand, but I would not. I would expect that we would have talked to New Zealand, we would have talked to a whole range of partners and partners who were signatories to the FCTC.
Sorry, the evidence before was you were in the process of speaking to people.
So that's on the regulatory side?
They did take on notice.
Okay.
That's right.
It's very unconvincing, obviously. I'm sorry, I've been involved. I was an economist at the Productivity Commission for many years, and this just seems like a shocking failure of policy development, that there's been almost zero effort to understand the effects of other countries. Particularly the issue here, the major issue we're trying to tackle is the proliferation of vapes in schools, which is absolute abhorrent outrage and concerning parents across the country. I have made efforts to speak to people in New Zealand about the situation, and the UK. I'm not sure why you can't yourselves, but I have done that. And they inform me, for what it's worth, and maybe they're wrong, but they inform me there's not an epidemic of vapes in schools. Do you have any evidence to dissuade me of that view, that there is an epidemic of vapes in countries that have moved to a regulated retail market like New Zealand and the UK, of vapes in schools?
So I think it's hard to compare like to like in terms of the kind of models that have been adopted, but as we committed, Senator, we will take on notice the different conversations we've had with international parties in the context of vaping. We have looked at a range of different models. We have looked at a range of models from Singapore that has banned it completely, through to China that is starting to look at restrictions on e-cigarettes production and sale, through to Norway, through to the US. So there's been a range of international comparisons, but the prescription model and the policy approach to looking at vaping and making sure that we have vaping as a cessation mechanism available to Australians, but not beyond that, is the policy commitment of this government.
In addition, can I just, sorry.
No.
In addition,
finish your answer and then
yeah, in terms of the regulatory side, our compliance and our enforcement experience to date, and also our laboratory testing, has demonstrated that a large proportion of the products that we have looked at that don't say they contain nicotine do contain nicotine, and in fact have so many other seriously horrible ingredients.
And this is
so that's why the regulatory component has to change as well.
This is the problem, and I agree, you've got to change. I just can't believe you're doubling down on failure. There's got to be change, because it's a complete and utter failure right now. Totally agree. But that's all from the black market. And we tried to stamp out the black market 2 or 3 years ago through the prescription model. Total failure. We've had an increase in youth vaping from 5% to 25%.
Senator.
And now we're just incentivising it again.
These are not black market nicotine label vapes. These are theoretically legally available, but they're
are they sold in pharmacies?
They're sold in convenience stores as non-nicotine vapes.
That's illegal.
So it's not.
That's a black market.
It's illegal only. It's illegal because they have nicotine and
sold at a shop. That's illegal now.
Yeah, it is illegal.
Okay, so it's a black market. Yeah. Something that's illegal is a black market, isn't it, Professor Murphy? I mean, what's your definition of a black market?
I think
you were disputing my comment about being black market, but what is your definition of black market?
Senator Canavan, you were very keen to make sure everyone listened to your question. Yeah. Yes, but now we need to
just one of the point I was making, Senator, is that people are not bringing in through black market means, as they do with cigarettes, nicotine labelled vapes and selling them outside of the regulated market. That's the challenge, is the whole labelling.
Professor Murphy, this is hopeless. It is an absolute failure of public policy. Your own department doesn't seem to understand what's going on in other countries, and you clearly have a one-eyed view of this issue, which I predict at least will only lead to continued failure.